Okay, so we all think we know the potato, right? But I promise you, its real story, its journey from being this totally feared, outcast vegetable to a global superstar is packed with secrets, some brilliant marketing, and a few very, very happy accidents. So, let's dig in.
I want you to just think about this for a second. The potato, in all its amazing forms, from fries to chips, is literally everywhere. But what if I told you that for hundreds of years, people were actually terrified to even eat it?
I mean, look at this contrast. It really says it all. On one hand, you have a vegetable that people blamed for disease, and even, moral corruption. And on the other, you have a staple of the entire global food system. So how in the world did it make that jump? Well, that's the story we're about to uncover.
All right, so our story kicks off back in the 1500s. The potato makes its way to Europe from South America, but it does not get a warm welcome. In fact, it's pretty much the opposite. For the next 200 years, it was met with nothing but deep suspicion and just outright hatred.
And these accusations were wild. It wasn't just looked down on as simple peasant food. No, people genuinely believed this little root vegetable could give you leprosy, that it caused fevers, and could even lead you down a path of sin. For 2 centuries, the potato was basically the villain of the vegetable world.
So how do you rebrand a vegetable that everyone hates? Well, it turns out all it took was one incredibly clever guy and what might just be one of the greatest publicity stunts in the history of food. This right here is the moment everything changed for the potato.
And the man with the plan was a French chemist, Antoine-Augustin Parmentier. He totally saw the potato's potential to feed the country, but he was smart. He knew he couldn't just tell people to eat it. No, he had to make them want to eat it.
His plan was just pure genius. It was all about reverse psychology. First, he plants this field of potatoes and declares it royal property. Then, he has soldiers guard it really heavily, but only during the day. This creates this illusion that whatever's in that field is super valuable. And then, he removes the guards at night, basically daring people to come and steal what they think is the king's precious exclusive food. And it worked. It worked perfectly. A nation fell in love with a stolen treasure.
Okay, let's jump forward in time to 20th century America, because this is where the story takes a huge turn. It's not about survival anymore. It's all about profit. This is where American ingenuity really kicked in and turned the humble potato into an absolute cash cow.
So, let's start with the hard numbers. For a restaurant, the actual cost of one plain baked potato is next to nothing. We're talking 5 cents to produce. It's cheap, it's filling, but the real genius wasn't the potato itself. It was what came next.
Back in the 1950s, American steakhouses had this brilliant light bulb moment. They realized the potato wasn't the moneymaker, the toppings were. By piling on pretty inexpensive things like cheese and bacon and sour cream, they could completely transform the dish's value. And the result? Suddenly that 5-cent potato could be sold for $8 or even more on a menu. The profit margin was just insane. A few decades later, Wendy's saw that exact model and turned the loaded baked potato into a fast food icon. And if you think that's clever, the story gets even better. So, in the 1970s, over at TGI Fridays, the cooks were scooping out the insides of potatoes for all their baked and mashed potato dishes, and they were literally just throwing the skins in the trash. It was just garbage. That is, until a cook named Donna Rosenthal had an idea. She thought, hey, why don't we just fill these leftover skins with some cheese and bacon and try selling them? They put it on the menu and boom, potato skins became one of the most popular appetizers in America. They literally turned trash into treasure. But not every potato innovation was about profit or some grand marketing scheme. Some of our absolute favorite dishes were never planned at all. They were born from necessity, mistaken identity, and, believe it or not, pure, unadulterated rage.
Okay, first things first, let's just clear the air. French fries are not French. Nope, they're Belgian. Way back in the 1600s, there were these villagers who normally fried up little fish from the river. But one winter, the river froze solid. So what did they do? They got creative. They cut potatoes into little fish shapes and fried those instead. American soldiers in World War I called them French fries simply because the local language in that part of Belgium was French, and, well, the name just stuck.
Hash browns were another one of those simple, practical inventions. In the late 1800s, what do you do with leftover boiled potatoes from last night's dinner? You chop them up, hash her in French, and you fry them. It was just a smart, tasty way to not waste food, and of course, McDonald's later made that simple idea famous all over the globe. All right, now for my absolute favorite origin story of them all. Picture this. It's 1853. You're at a restaurant in Saratoga Springs, New York, and there's this one customer who keeps sending his fried potatoes back to the kitchen, complaining over and over again that they're too thick and they're not crispy enough.
So the chef, a guy named George Crum, is getting more and more frustrated. He is completely fed up with this guy. So he decides he's going to teach this customer a lesson. He marches back into the kitchen, not to make the guy happy, but to get a little culinary revenge.
Seriously, none of this was meant to be good food. Crum sliced the potatoes so thin they were basically transparent. He fried them until they were as brittle as a potato could possibly be. Then he just drowned them in salt. He sent them out as a sarcastic joke, pretty much saying, "Oh, you want crispy? I'll give you crispy."
And here's the punchline: the customer absolutely loved them. What started as an act of total spite accidentally created one of the most popular snack foods on the entire planet, the potato chip.
So when you start to pull all of these different threads together, you've got the clever marketing, the economics, the happy accidents, you really start to see the incredible, unlikely story of how this one single vegetable completely took over the world.
And that little act of frustration from Chef George Crum, that moment of anger, it gave birth to a global potato chip industry that today is worth over $30 billion a year, all from one annoyed chef having a bad day.
And really, that's the whole story in a nutshell. The potato went from being feared for causing diseases, to being made popular by a brilliant PR campaign, to being monetized by American restaurants, and finally perfected through a series of pure, wonderful accidents.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? The food on our plates, it has all these stories we've never even thought to ask about. So the next time you grab a bag of chips or order some fries, just remember their wild secret history. And maybe ask yourself, what other hidden stories are just waiting to be discovered right in my own kitchen?